So what has been happening in the Xinjiang province of China? It has been a military conflict, right? That the CIA has been funneling terrorists, Uyghur separatists with the East Turkmenic Islamic movement into the Xinjiang province, right? And they've been doing that simultaneously while there has been a major refugee crisis going on the border between Afghanistan and China. That there is a major conflict happening in the Xinjiang province. There are major acts of violence that are occurring because of all of this, right? And it's culminated in the Chinese going in and attempting to find solutions to how to deal with these crises that don't involve just dropping bombs on people the way the Americans do, right? And because they decided, we're going to create education centers to try to give people who have only known war, who have had their lives destroyed. And some of these guys literally walking around being like, yeah, if I can get some explosive, I'll strap myself to them and blow myself up for the glory of Allah, right? They're outright saying this kind of shit. And so what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to make it so that you can integrate them into your wider economy. How do you do that, right? How do you integrate people into your wider economy? Well, first, you teach them Chinese. Second, you give them some skills. So the analogy or the mirror to this, rather, because it's not an analogy, it's actually happening, would be if the detention centers along the Mexican-United States border, right, the ICE detention centers, if they started to teach those people English and give them some skills and then release them into the populace, right? That would be a similar analogy. They're not doing that, of course, which makes them morally superior for some reason. So pretty similar situation that's happening. The Chinese solution, teach them Chinese, teach them a skill, let them go. And because they've been doing this, what has it been doing? It's been de-escalating the conflict. It's been working, right? It's been working. That the terrorist separatist groups are finding it harder and harder to find allies because people are actually finding support systems through the Chinese Communist Party. And so because these policies are working, now we're starting to see Western sources coming out admitting it, and of course they're finding a new way to try to shift this. So the panic that gripped the region a few years ago has subsided considerably because the policies of the Chinese Communist Party are working, and a sense of normality is creeping back in. But there is no doubt about who rules. Yeah, like the Chinese rule the Xinjiang province, obviously. That's so you can see how all they've got left is shade throwing, right? It'd be like saying, like, the tensions in Wyoming have de-escalated, but there's no doubt about who rules. Like, okay, so fucking stupid. The barbed wire is almost gone, right? Because conflicts have de-escalated because the Chinese policy of training people and reintegrating them into the wider economy is working. So are the armored personnel carriers. Young Uyghur men are back on the streets. Beijing is slackening its grip on Xinjiang after a brutal mass detention campaigns, but fear remains pervasive, right? You see how the Westerners are reporting it with this, like, inflicting oppression, like, instead of actually reporting it on what was happening, right? Instead of actually reporting that there is, like, a massive conflict that the Chinese just find themselves in, right? That they didn't cause themselves, that fallout from the Afghanistan war, as well as fallout from a separatist movement, which incidentally the CIA works with, needed to be responded with military force, which it was. And now through this process of reintegration, which has worked completely, but fear remains pervasive. Yeah, of course fear remains pervasive. Fear of the CIA coming in and continuing its training of Uyghur separatists and Uyghur terrorists in order to bomb people in the region. Fear of the United States government launching attacks against the Chinese people. Absolutely, fear remains pervasive because the Chinese understand that their attempts to deal with this situation peacefully without actually bombing anybody or maintaining detention centers forever, which seems to be the American solution, that the American solution is very much detain people forever, right? Which is what the ICE detention centers are. There's no policy for getting these people released. There's no policy for getting these people reintegrated into the society, and yet the ICE detention centers are somehow seen as more superior than what the Chinese did, which was a policy of reintegration into the society. It wasn't a fucking genocide. Like, it's straight up not a genocide. And you're just seeing more and more Chinese authorities have shifted to subtler methods of controlling the Uyghur Turkic Muslims of Xinjiang, perhaps due to, here they are just taking responsibility for it, right? Perhaps due to searing criticism from the West, along with punishing political and commercial sanctions. But the fear in Xinjiang persists. Like, straight up, they're saying, like, oh yeah, it's the white colonial critique of the system that actually worked, that managed to do this, right? Certainly wasn't done in spite of the Westerners, right? It was done because of the Westerners. So this is the shift in propaganda now. That the shift is now away from there's a genocide going on to there was a genocide going on, but we stopped it with our criticisms. Because white people have the ability to stop things through criticism. And again, it's like, since when has America ever given a shit about Muslims? Since when have they ever given a shit about Muslims at all? They're actively destroying Iraq. They're trying to destroy Iran, Somalia, Syria, right? Like a coup in Egypt. Like, they literally had a 20-year war in Afghanistan that they just wrapped up on. Like, what the fuck are you even talking about? No one takes this credibly. Like, everyone outside of America is just like, yeah, okay, bud, whatever you fucking say. Like, it is actually embarrassing. Like, it is actually embarrassing. But the fact that there are people who are grabbing a hold of this and will say for generations to come that there definitely was a genocide that happened. That 100%, yeah, absolutely the truth. Like, literally, what would it take to convince them? They can't be convinced. You can find videos of Uyghurs existing, being part of police forces, being part of the society. You can see it. You can search videos on YouTube for it, right? It's easy to find. And yet we're supposed to actually believe that, yeah, there was a genocide and we stopped it because white people critiqued it. White people solving problems through rational discourse. That's how it goes, for sure. For sure. Like, it's this normalization of the idea that there was a genocide in the first place, right? And now that it's completely, like, you cannot maintain this position that there is a genocide going on, especially now as they are starting to dismantle the military aperture because they no longer need it, because the policy was successful. So now it isn't that there is a genocide, it's that there was a genocide. And that the Uyghurs are just like, oh yeah, we're just coming back out into the streets now, instead of literally, like, having it always be the case. Yeah, accuse others of what you yourself are guilty of. Exactly. Like the Americans are overseeing a genocide in Yemen, a genocide in the occupied territories of Palestine, and while also having detention centers on the U.S.-Mexican border, right? Like, and not to mention their own prison system, where they only have something like 4% of the world's population, and yet they have like 25% of the world's prison population. Like, and most of the prison population is black. Like, what do you fucking think is happening, guys? Like, what do you fucking think is happening? Why would you ever think the Americans have any credibility whatsoever? And yet I'm supposed to sit here and be like, yeah, the media is absolutely telling the truth. And I say this to people all the time. How much do you trust your media? And everybody says the same thing. Like, I say, give a scale from 1 to 10. How much do you trust your media? 1 being very bad, 10 being really good. Everybody says below 5. I've never actually had anybody say above 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 doesn't happen. Right? It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all across the board. Some people say 0. Some people are like in the negatives, right? And then I say to them, like, so then why do you trust them when it comes to China? And every single time I say this, I get this kind of like they're stunned into silence about it, because they haven't quite connected the dots in their head that the people who are liars and have been lying to them about everything all the time, to the point where they themselves say, I don't trust these people, are the same people that are lying about China. Why? So that when the Americans go in and try to destroy 30% of the Chinese economy, which they've stated is their objective, we'll just sort of stand around and be like, yeah, that's right, China. Huh, yeah, China's bad. Because my media that I don't trust told me. Like, that's how stupid the situation has become. Like, there is no Uyghur genocide. There never was a Uyghur genocide. And if you're trying to walk around say that there's a Uyghur genocide, I genuinely think at this point you're either actively, purposefully misinformed or just stupid. Like, that's really where we're at now. Because, like, there's so much pushback. There's so much evidence countervailing this narrative that there is a Uyghur genocide. It's become kind of embarrassing. And it's going to get more and more obvious as time goes forward, guys. Like, it's going to get way, way more obvious as time goes forward. And because the prison system itself is privatized, right? There are all of these incentives to just funnel black people into the prison system, right? It solves so many neocolonial problems, right? What do you do with a black population that keeps spitting out civil rights people, that keeps spitting out people who articulate and speak out against their enslavement? Like they had to shoot Tupac for this. They shot Martin Luther King for it. They shot Malcolm X for it. And so eventually they're just like, well, what do we keep doing about this? All these black guys keep standing up and actually articulating their own enslavement, and that's bad. So what do? We just enslave most of the or a huge section of the population, right? We enslave enormous sections of the population, create slave prison labor, basically recreate the plantation system, right? And somehow call this justice. And like you hear all these stories where like a minor offense. Well, for God's sakes, George Floyd was publicly executed for the crime of what? Like stealing $20 is what he was accused of, right? So man steals $20, publicly executed in the street for it. Absolutely brutal. Like absolutely brutal. And yet this culture we're supposed to believe when they turn around and say like, oh, there's a genocide going on in Xinjiang. For sure, guys, there's a genocide going on in Xinjiang. That's for sure happening. Yeah, we're not just saying that so that we can bomb the place. We're saying that because we genuinely care about Muslims for some reason in this particular case. Like, no, you don't. Like, no, you fucking don't. Right? And at the end of the day, from the beginning of if you go back through my history, I've been talking about this for a year at least. My statement always has been, evidence, please. Evidence, please. Evidence, right? And they never have any. They never have any. Like, for God's sakes, they sent a BBC film crew into one of these centers and found nothing. They found nothing. And in fact, they confirmed the story that the Chinese were saying through this BBC documentary. Like, evidence, please. Evidence, please. They never have any. There has never once been a shred of evidence provided outside of like CIA assets like the World Uyghur Tribunal or the National Endowment for Democracy, which literally are like there for regime change. That's what their stated agenda is. And it's just like, it's becoming embarrassing. And sometimes people do wander in here or put posts on all this kind of stuff, being like, oh, you're just a genocide denier. It's like, yeah, I will deny things that have no evidence. Like, that which is claimed without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Evidence, please. Oh, you have none? Here's a document that the Chinese could possibly use to abuse, possibly, maybe. Look, you dummies. I'm going to be really explicit about this, okay? When cultures begin to do a genocide, it's not done in secret. It's not done through, like, secretive, underhanded means. When societies commit to a genocide against a people, they explicitly state that that is their goal, and they do it. Adolf Hitler wrote a book called Mein Kampf, where he said his goal was to exterminate the Jews. The residential school system here in Canada was explicitly built with the goal of killing the Indian, right? When the colonial people came over to North America, they outright stated that their goal was to eradicate these people, right? Show me even one person in China. Show me even one person, one governor, one document, anything where they are saying our goal is to commit a genocide against the Uyghurs. It doesn't exist. I've never seen it. Evidence, please. Until such time, get fucked. The whole genocide language co-opted by capitalist warmongers is laughable. Absolutely, dude. Like, absolutely. Like, the Americans are committing to... Like, they've got 3 genocides going on right now. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like... And again, it's the same people. The same people who are like, you need to clean up your own house and stand up straight and get things right and all that kind of stuff. The same people are then turning around and pretending like they have the right or the credibility to critique China while their own culture does fucking 3 genocides. Like, it's brutal. Like, it's so... Like, show me a document where China is even saying, like, we are going to... we are interested in war at all. Like, the Americans are literally releasing documents saying that there's a document called Thinking Through the Unthinkable, comes out of the Rand Corporation, where they outright talk about just bombing China, destroying 30% of its economy. Like, anything like that coming out of China? No? Oh. Who's the aggressors, do you think? Like, who do you think's... And now it's becoming more and more obvious. Right? Because the conflict that was happening in Xinjiang has been resolved, because the policies of the Chinese government have worked, right? That the reintegration of these extremist groups, that the reintegration of these refugees into the wider economy has worked. And so it's harder for people to actually foment discontent and create military attacks and things like this, because they know that they have a choice. They know they've got a choice. That if the option is grab a gun and a bomb and go in and blow places up and then maybe get arrested and imprisoned or die, or go to this center, learn Chinese, make some money, and be reintegrated into the society, lots of people are taking this option. Lots of people are taking that option, right? Like lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people are taking that option. And it's becoming embarrassing to see now. Like, the people who are really doubling down on the Uyghur genocide myth, it's just getting to be like the same people who like refuse to put on masks and get a fucking vaccine. Like, it's like a flat earther thing now. Like, it's embarrassing is what it is. It's embarrassing. So give it a rest. Stop trying to go to war with China. Like, stop going to war with China. They're just a people attempting to make their way through the world, right? They're not even imperialist. Like, it's especially cringy that it's coming out of Americans. Like, what are you fucking talking about? Americans don't have the right to critique any culture or country ever. Not even a little bit. Not even a little fucking bit. Right? Americans are so fucking stupid about their own country, they don't have the right to talk about some other country they know nothing about. Every real genocide in history has always been accompanied with mass xenophobia towards the genocided people from the general populace. I don't see any anti-Uyghur sentiments amongst the Chinese people. Yeah, like, there's that, first of all. But I make it even more explicit than this, as y'all. Like, when a culture commits a genocide, it is extremely well documented. I can show you documents coming from the Canadian Parliament. In the Canadian Parliament, people were saying we should erect a school system in order to cleanse the Indian from the Indian. Like, we need to eliminate them. There needs to be a final solution to the Indian problem. Like, these statements were made in Parliament, in front of everybody, and everybody went, yeah, I agree, that's a good idea, yeah, let's do it. And they all voted for it. You can see it with your eyes, right? Like, again, the Hitler example, right? Like, Hitler had a book he wrote called Mein Kampf, where he said, I would like to eliminate the Jews. Everybody knew this. He got votes in spite or because of this. He's walking around with a book that says explicitly that that's his goal. And then when he gets into power, oopsie, the guy that said he wanted to commit a genocide on everybody openly all the time, constantly, did. Right? There's literally nothing like that in China. There's not a scrap of paper. There's not a single person in their political system. And like, this also gives enormous lie to the Uyghur genocide thing, because how do you organize something like this? How do you organize a project of genocide without talking about it? Right? Like, that's what the Americans are saying. The Americans are saying that the Chinese are somehow managing to commit to like an 8 million people scale genocide, right? Without talking about it. How are they doing that? How? What magical power? What mystical quality do the Chinese have where they're able to silently communicate with one another that we should do a genocide against the Uyghur population? Right? Like, it's insane. And the more you think about it, the stupider it gets. Like, and like the Uyghur population increased over that period of time. The Chinese government funneled billions of dollars into the region to create infrastructure. Like, you generally, the more you learn about it, to maintain the myth, you've got to get stupider and stupider over time. You just need to get stupider. And it's the same thing as the WMD thing. It's the same grift. Just tell a big lie, everyone will go along with it so that when we start the bombing, no one will complain. And it doesn't matter if it comes out later that it's a lie, right? And just like, why would you ever believe the Americans? They've literally lied about every single war they've gone in ever. Every single war they've ever fought is based on a lie. Like, it's just like, it's embarrassing at this point. Hey there, if you've made it to this point, you're at the end of the video. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Those are the rules of the internet. I don't make them up, I just enforce them. If you'd like to donate to my Patreon, support leftist voices, please do so. It's just down below. Even $1 helps. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Good luck. We're gonna need it.